L.W. de Laurence, The Master Key. Chapter 11, Lesson 10, The Claiming of Your Own. Whatever you create by your thoughts is your own. If there is one aspect in which concentration, will culture, and mental discipline can be of help to you, it is in the claiming of your own. First, as to your own. What is it? Whatever you create by your thoughts is your own. This is not coveting what someone else possesses, or begrudging the position of those who are more fortunately circumstanced than yourself. That's a species of imitation, and the work of the imitator is always more or less a failure. You create relationships with things when they are the children of your own imagination. An architect plans in his own mind a beautiful building, and he transfers his ideas to paper, explains what he wants, and his wishes are carried out to the letter. The artist draws his picture first mentally in his mind, and his hand is only the transferring medium. The writer has not the space to explain all that Emerson implied when he wrote, "Whatever in nature is thine own, floating in air or pent in stone, shall rive the hills and swim the sea, and like thy shadow follow thee." The strange affinity between objects and human beings has long been a source of mystery. Many instances could be cited of people wishing they had certain things when they scarcely expected they would ever, which they scarcely expected they would ever see, and how their desires have been gratified. You will be shown in this work that there is no legitimate way of getting anything without giving an equivalent. So if you wish to attract certain circumstances to yourself or yours, you must first make the link between them and yourself after the principles enunciated and laid down here. If a man does not properly relate himself to his circumstances by having faith and the development of mental discipline, then there is inharmony, and the two have to part company. It is like the square man in the round hole. And your business in the great school of life and business is to know just what you want, and then make up your mind to secure it. Concentration here is of immense value. Having decided upon what the goal is, you must take the first problem which presents itself, go carefully over the various aspects it presents, closing the mind as taught herein to all that is irrelevant to the matter. It's surprising how a little practice along the lines of mental discipline enables one to almost instinctively select those avenues of thought which will give us what we seek. Do not worry about ways and means. Your part is to decide on the principle, and the immutable law of life will do the rest. A case in point may help to make this clear. Whilst writing this book, an employee of a business firm related to the author how he got his first start. He had been stopped, discharged at his work without any notice, and told there would be nothing for him for several months. It was a quiet time of the year, and the corresponding period of the previous year he had been dismissed for a month. The firm had been in the habit of employing in the busy season men with scarcely any experience, and to these they gave the usual notice. This was resented, as was the employment of these casual workers, which meant rushing work out in a brief spell and then nothing to do for the regular employees later. This man had foreseen this and the customary stoppage, and wished to go into business for himself, so as to be independent of the firm, which only followed the tactics of similar employers in his city. He had no capital and no friends or influence. He had concentration, faith, and belief in himself, however. And while fully making up his mind to be his own employer, he saw no means of accomplishing it. As he left the workshop on the Saturday noon, having received his dismissal, he was met by a man he knew who was a contractor doing a fair business. Exchanging greetings, the workman mentioned he had been just laid off, and that all similar trades would be quiet for a time. "Have you never thought of starting for yourself?" asked the contractor. The man admitted that he had, but that he lacked capital. The contractor there and then offered him a contract which would amount to $500. The money to be paid as the work was finished. So he pointed out that his usual custom was when a contract was given in the month October, he did not settle for it until the following April. The offer was taken and the man never regretted it, building up a nice little business, which shows every prospect of healthy growth. The law of attraction. The fact of often thinking how the end in view might be attained had telepathically struck the contractor. And an odd moment when the mind was not particularly employed, and only a few moments before meeting with that workman. The workman certainly thought it odd from the way he told the story. It seemed a strange coincidence to him, and a lot of similar coincidences would, if inquired into, be found to be instances of the law of attraction operating through its appointed channels. Let a clean-cut mental image be made in the mind of what is desired. Concentrate quietly for a few moments over it, and day by day repeat the process, adding details as required, but not materially altering the original. If it is an object you want, do not see someone else's and wish it yours, but see the thing quite apart from its setting. And in your own house. Means will be forthcoming which will materialize the object if mental discipline is gained and the principles laid down in this work are adhered to. If, on the other hand, one wishes to change their circumstances, they should not mentally picture themselves in surroundings utterly removed from their present situation or position. That is to say, a man always accustomed to earning $5 a week would scarcely be likely to see himself earning $500 in the same period. Because speaking generally, a man content with such a small amount as $5 a week would scarcely be an ambitious, pushing fellow. And any other type would not be likely to make a mental leap to a sum of 100-fold more than he had been in the habit of receiving. A man in such a position would be more likely to wish to see his income double, treble. And in these circumstances, he'd be more likely to bring himself into line with his surroundings. Try to imagine a clerk offered an appointment as an ambassador to a big European court. Would the man be at home with a diplomatic corps, or likely to shine in a piece of statecraft? No, the idea would never occur to the clerk himself. And if an enthusiastic but misguided friend got him pitchforked into the appointment, we may easily conjecture the outcome of the action. Yet such a supposition would be on a par with the views one sometimes hears put forward by readers and beginners of the new psychology who expect miracles instead of legitimate results compatible with the nature of the mental and psychological efforts put forth. It is the question of proper adjustment between man and his surroundings, and a man relating himself or coming into harmony with the surroundings he seeks to enter. Be perfectly sure that no one or no thing can keep your own from you, if you have confidence and faith enough in yourself to claim it. Yet all is law, and skipping across wide gulfs is unknown. Get a clear-cut idea of the surroundings you believe that you are cut out for. And step by step, you will mount nearer to your ideal if you faithfully carry out the lessons laid down in this book. Reverting to the question of increasing one's mental capacity, which was left for further consideration. The student throughout this work will be shown that he must gain discipline over his mental forces, and then use scientific concentration to energize his brain. Because with the calling into activity of more brain cells, the mentality is made the richer. And in the meaning of life, this is progress. If the brain area is not increased, a man stands still. Or merely marks time, and that is what too many are doing. It used to be laid down as a scientific fact that the number of brain cells was limited, also that the whole of the brain was used. Recent researches of experimental psychology shows both conclusions to be erroneous, and with regard to the latter, the percentage of the brain used in daily life is only 5. What becomes of the other 95%? And why should there be such a surplus of brain? Well, respecting the former, this proportion lies fallow, awaiting cultivation. And reflecting upon the second question, we come face to face with one of the most profound facts of the 20th century, though no writer, so far as the author is aware, seems to have remarked upon it. It is this: nature rarely supplies that for which there is not a use. Why should man have mental material many times greater than he wants? It is because man has unfolded his powers to such a small extent. Evolution is moving forward very, very rapidly at present, and man will do the same and require much more brain area than he has hitherto found necessary. Man's magnificent brain area and mental forces are waiting for cultivation. Faith, belief, and scientific concentration on the idea of expansion will awaken into vibration unused folds of the brain. As you concentrate on these dormant tracts, affirm, I desire that more and more of my brains shall be used, that my mental forces will increase, that I will have complete control and mental discipline over them. Repeat this time after time, but not in a mechanical way, but full of the deepest feeling and faith in the expansion of consciousness. This thought should be given to the higher mind as the storeway on rising, a few minutes at noon, and again before retiring. After keeping consciousness for a moment or so on this awakened center, concentrate on it and see with the mind's eye movements taking place in this new mass of gray matter. Several writers have stated that they have felt their brains move when they were full of ideas, or felt particularly full of them in buoyancy, and often after certain foods. Sometimes new ideas have produced excessive brain activity, but this can only occur in those cases where the training laid down for stilling the brain had not been followed. Poise and power rightly go together. They are really complementary. And until the student has had some measure of success with the former, he's not likely to be remarkable in the latter. The uprising of new forces in the brain must be watched and trained in accordance with the instructions laid down further on in this work. And the faithful student will often be pleased to detect a feeling of exhilaration pulse through his mind and he will know that mental virility and discipline is beginning to make itself felt. Originality and brilliancy are both possible where the conditions dealt with here are observed. When one mind follows another, its thinking is commonplace and normal. Thinking along the same lines as other people never permits your mentality to expand far. Originality can only take place where the consciousness seeks the upper regions of the mind. In the lower are all the commonplace, ordinary types of thought. Just as the atmosphere becomes rarefied at high levels, so the thoughts at high mental levels look at things from new standpoints. The imagination dwells on those higher levels, and if one wishes to soar above the well-named common sense, in the realms of the finer senses, he has only to train his imagination, which is always done when the mind tacitly admits that there are higher thought currents and wills that his mind may reach them. Excuse me. If a man expects to always be commonplace, he will not put the mind in that position in which it can avail itself of the higher currents. The writer is always suggesting that the best books of all ages should be cultivated. Yes. As well as one will be weaned from the usual views of life and of things, and see things through the eyes of great men. Indeed, to study the biographies of great men will not only prove an incentive to tread a similar path, but one will occasionally come across ideas which will illuminate Lord Rosebery's phrase respecting Oliver Cromwell as a practical mystic. Hitherto, many people have considered the practical psychologist as a neurotic, unpractical daydreamer. But the idea is gaining force that one can enter the highest realms of being, of which the mind can conceive and bring therefrom material that can be fashioned or adapted to the daily life. The views of later thinkers concerning genius have undergone very great changes, and the most illumined minds now admit that the genius is no different in kind from his fellow men, but only in degree. The man or woman that wishes to grow to the height of a genius can enlarge their mental capacity daily until they come into contact with the upper reaches of the sea of mentality, which is filled with the higher vibrations. Genius does not seem so far removed from us when we see how it is possible to mold character, master one's weaknesses, and enlarge one's consciousness. And the more originality is adduced, the more one tends toward genius, as it is only a large measure of originality. The greater worlds around us, which we fail to cognize with our present limited senses, lie open to the inspection of those using what really is the superconscious mind, the mind employed by all great men. This mind is only an extension of the everyday mind, the normal consciousness, much in the same way that the subconscious is. All who would attain beyond the present confines will find in scientific concentration, true faith and belief in oneself for success, the master key to the great powers within the human soul and mind. Up next, the Master Key, Part 2, Chapter 12, Scientific Concentration, Attention and Mental Discipline, Introduction to Part 2. That's for the next video. See you there. L.W. Laurence, the Master Key.